It was not until after New Year's Eve, 1511, that he was able to start painting again. During the intervening months he had added to his fund of aggravation and frustration. Unable to stand the inactivity any longer, he had followed the Pope to Bologna, only to find the Bentivoglios regaining power. Pope Julius, too immersed in his troubles, to see him. He had gone on to Florence to visit Buonarrota, resolved to take some of his past savings, which had been deposited for safekeeping with the Spedalingo business manager of the hospital of Santa Maria Nova, rebuild his scaffold, and return to his work without permission of the Pope's money. He found Buonarrota recovered, but too weak to work, and that his father had received the first political appointment tendered by Florence to Buonarroti in Michelangelo's lifetime. As podesta in the village of San Casciano, Lodovico had taken with him some of the savings from the Spedalingo without Michelangelo's knowledge or consent, money to which he no longer had a legal right. An apologetic letter from his father explained, "I took them with the hope that I should be able to put them back before your return to Florence. Now I see that I did wrong. I am awfully sorry. I did wrong in following other people's advices." He had returned to Rome empty-handed, and it seemed that Pope Julius, too, would return empty-handed. For Julius the general had everything gone wrong. Though his troops had taken Modena, he had found Bologna meagerly garrisoned and low on food supplies, with the Bentivoglios at one gate, the French army entrenched a few miles away. Ferrara had driven off his army in a serious defeat. The Swiss troops had been bribed by the French to return home. He was ready to send Pico della Mirandola's nephew to negotiate his surrender to the French when the Venetian and Spanish troops finally arrived to save him. Now the Datary returned with the money owed Michelangelo, permission to place his scaffold under the second half of the chapel, across to the Pope's throne at the end, and the money to pay for it. Now Michelangelo could come to grips with God. God creating Adam, creating the sun and moon, dividing the waters from the earth, separating light and darkness. Strive to visualize a God of such transcendence that everyone would cry out, "Yes, that is the Lord God. None other could be." These 4 panels were the heart of the vault. Everything depended upon them. Unless he could create God as convincingly as God had created man, his ceiling would lack the focal core from whence sprang its reason for being. He had always loved God. In his darkest hours he cried out, God did not create us to abandon us. His faith in God sustained him, and now he must make manifest to the world who God knows, who God was, what he looked and felt like, wherein lay his divine power and grace. His God must not be special or peculiar or particular, but God the Father to all men, one whom they could accept, honor, adore. It was a delicate task, yet he did not doubt that he could achieve such a God. He had only to set down in drawings the image he had carried with him since childhood. God is the most beautiful, powerful, intelligent, and loving force in the universe. Since he had created man in his own image, he had the face and body of a man. The first human whom God created, Adam, had surely been fashioned in his likeness, by setting forth Adam, the son, true creature of his father, magnificent in body, noble in thought, tender in spirit, beautiful of face and limb, archetype of all that was the finest in heaven and on earth. There would be reflected God the Father, God in clinging white robe, which matched his virile white beard, had only to hold out his right arm to Adam, to reach one infinitesimal life-breath more, man and the world would begin. While Michelangelo remained high in the heavens, painting the smaller panel of God dividing the waters from the earth, Julius reversed positions with his fresco painter, plunging into the special Eterno reserved for warriors who suffer a rout. He failed in his siege of Ferrara, failed in his efforts to break the alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and France. Went down so badly with gout that he had to be carried to Ravenna in an ox cart. His papal and Venetian forces were severely defeated by the rampaging Ferrarese. his funds so exhausted that he had to raise 80,000 ducats by selling 8 new cardinalates at 10,000 ducats each. The French and Ferraris recaptured Bologna and reinstated the Bentivoglios. Julius lost his armies, artillery, baggage, the last of his resources. Crushed, making his way back to Rome, he found nailed to the cathedral door at Rimini a summons of all rebellious churchmen to a general council at Pisa to conduct an inquiry into the official behavior of Pope Julius II. Julius' defeat was a defeat for Michelangelo, for his life had become inextricably interwoven with his pontiffs. The moment the Bentivoglios returned to power, the Bolognese had thronged into the Piazza Maggiore, torn his bronze statue of Julius from its niche and thrown it to the paving stones. The triumphant Duke of Ferrara had then melted it down and recast it into a cannon, which he named Julius. 15 months of his time, energy, talent, and suffering now set on the cobbles of the Piazza Maggiore in the form of a cannon that was the butt of coarse jokes from the Bolognese, and would surely be used against Pope Julius if he were rash enough to lead another army northward. Vincenzo had triumphed. Here in Rome, it seemed to Michelangelo, the same pattern of overthrow must inevitably continue. During the warm light days of May and June, he spent 17 consecutive hours on the scaffold, taking food and a chamber pot up with him, so that he would not have to descend, painting like a man possessed the 4 glorious nude males in the corners of the panels. Then the young prophet Daniel with an enormous book on his lap, opposite the old Persian Sibyl in his white and rose robes. Then the single most powerful portrait on the ceiling, God in deeply dramatic action, creating the golden ball of the sun, hoping, praying, striving desperately to complete his genesis before the collapse of its protector, before outraged successors came in, clerical or military, and, wanting to wipe out all traces of Pope Julius II's reign, sent a crew into the Sistine to spread coats of whitewash over its ceiling. It was a race against death. As a result of his internecine warfare, Julius had returned to Rome the most hated man in Italy, his resources so exhausted that he had to carry the papal tiara to the banker Chigi's house under his robes, ostensibly going to dinner, but actually to borrow 40,000 ducats on the jewels. His enmities extended to all the city-states he had defeated and punished. Venice, Bologna, Modena, Perugia, Mirandola, even the Roman nobles, some of whom he had led his defeated armies, were now in league against him. Bound to each other, understanding defeat, Michelangelo felt that he must call out his pope, the only obligation that could take him off the scaffold. Holy Father, I have come to pay my respects. Julius' face was ravaged by frustration and illness. Their last face-to-face encounter had been a stormy one, yet instinctively Julius sensed that Michelangelo had not come seeking revenge. Julius' voice was friendly, intimate. They felt strongly drawn to each other. Your ceiling, it moves along. Holiness, I think you will be gratified. If I am, you will be the first to bring me gratification for a long time. It is no simpler in art than in war, Holiness, said Michelangelo firmly. I will come to the Sistine with you, this very moment. He could hardly make it up the ladder. Michelangelo had to haul him the last few rungs. He stood panting at the top. Then he saw God above him, about to impart the gift of life to Adam. A smile came to his cracked lips. Do you truly believe that God is that benign? Yes, Holy Father. I most ardently hope so, since I am going to be standing before him before long. If he is as you have painted him, then I shall be forgiven my sins. He turned his face toward Michelangelo, his expression radiant. I'm pleased with you, my son. Basking in the rays of the hot sun and the Pope's hearty acceptance of his labors, Michelangelo was reluctant to relinquish the happy mood. Wanting to hold its warmth and tranquility for a little while longer, he crossed the piazza to where the piers and walls of the new St. Peter's were beginning to rise. As he got closer, he was surprised to find that Buonmonte was not building in the traditional manner for cathedrals of solid stone and concrete, but was erecting hollow concrete forms and filling them with rubble from the old basilica and other debris. The bulky mass would give the appearance of being solid, but was it not a dangerous way to support so heavy a structure? This was only the beginning of his astonishment. As he circled the works and watched the men preparing the concrete, he saw that they were not following the sound engineering precept of 1 portion of cement to 3 or 4 of sand, but were using 10 and 12 portions of sand to each one of cement. There was no question in his mind that this mix could be fatal, under the best of circumstances, but to hold the vast St. Peter's with uncompacted debris between its piers, it could be catastrophic. He made straight for Bramante's palace, was admitted by a liveried footman into the elegance of the foyer, with its rich Persian carpets, priceless tapestries, and furniture. He had not been invited, but the message he had to deliver was urgent. Bramante was working in his library, clad in a silk robe with cold clasps at the throat and waist. "Bramante, I will pay you the compliment of believing that you do not know what is going on," he began without preamble or salutation. "However, when the walls of St. Peter's crumble, it will make little difference whether you were stupid or merely negligent. Your walls will crack." Bramante was annoyed at the visit. "Who are you, a ceiling decorator, to tell the greatest architect in Europe how to build piers?" "The same one who showed you how to build a scaffold. Someone is cheating you." "Davvero? It is true? How?" "By putting in the mix considerably less cement than the minimum requirements." "Ah, you're an engineer." Michelangelo ignored the remark. "Bramante, watch your foreman prepare the cement. Somebody is taking advantage." Bramante went purple with rage, his bull-like shoulders hunched up around his jowls. "Whom else have you told this to?" "No one. I hurried here to warn you." Bramante rose, clenched both fists in front of his jaw. "Buonarroti, if you run to the Pope with this scandal-mongering, I swear I'll strangle you with my bare hands. You're nothing but an incompetent, trouble-making Florentine." He spat out the last word as though it were a deadly insult. Michelangelo remained calm. "I shall watch your cement mix for 2 days. At the end of that time, if you are not using safe proportions, I shall report it to the Pope and to everyone else who will listen to me." "No one will listen to you." "You command no respect in Rome. Now get out of my house." Bramante did nothing to change his materials. Michelangelo sweated out the paint from his pores in the Piazza Cavalli baths, put on his brown shirt and calza, went to the papal palace. Julius listened for a time, then interrupted. His voice was impatient, though not unkind. "My son, you should not bother yourself with other people's affairs. Bramante has already warned me of your attack on him. I don't know the cause of your eternity, but it is unworthy of you." "Holy Father, I genuinely fear for the structure. The new St. Peter's grew out of the son Gallo's idea for a separate chapel for your holiness' tomb. I feel responsible. Buonarroti, are you an architect?" "To the extent that every good sculptor is an architect." "But you are not as good an architect or as experienced as Bramante." "No, Holy Father." "Is he interfering in the way you are painting the Sistine?" "No, he is not." "Then why can't you be content to paint your ceiling and let Bramante build his church?" "If your holiness would appoint a commission to investigate, I came out of a sense of loyalty." "I know that, my son," replied Julius. But St. Peter's is going to take many years to build. If you come running here in hot blood every time you see something you don't like." Michelangelo knelt abruptly, kissed the Pope's ring, left. The Pope was right. Why could he not mind his own business? Yet he could not be neutral about St. Peter's. It had been the cause of unsettling his friend Sangallo, had given Bramante the ascendancy in the Pope's mind, which led to the cancellation of the 2 marbles, to his being locked out of the papal palace, to the months of irresolution in Florence, the more than a year of wasted work in Bologna, and now more years of servitude in the vault. He was also sorely puzzled. Bramante was too good an architect to put his most important creation in danger. There must be an explanation. Leo Baglioni knew everything. He knocked on his door. "It's not hard to explain," replied Leo casually. "Bramante is living beyond his means, spending hundreds of thousands of ducats. He has to have more money from any source. Right now the peers of St. Peter's are paying his debts." Aghast, Michelangelo cried, "Have you told the Pope this?" "Assuredly not. But how can you be silent in such a matter? You told the Pope the facts. What did it get you? Besides an abomination, and mind your own business.